Hi, welcome everyone. I thought today's session would be talking about how we manage our client session in the way of bookings and follow-ups and reminders and payments and all of that sort of stuff. So today I've got Teresa Saunders joining me again, talk through these things. And I hope you enjoy this one. It is for those that are maybe wanting to start a practice, not knowing where to start, maybe going from having that traditional paper-bound diary to something a little bit more sophisticated that's going to fit with this modern world that we currently live in.
Meredith.
Hi, Teresa. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
Good. So when we're thinking about these sort of ideas of starting up a business, or even if you're in a business, let's say you've been around and you're the age of the dinosaur and you're still using that paper diary, there comes a time where we need to sometimes take that leap of faith and get automated, get a system up and running. What are your thoughts when you sort of start to think about things like that?
Yeah, I mean, long time ago, probably like everybody else, I had a diary and a calendar and those sort of things. But these days, I actually personally rely on my phone, and I like the automated systems, which can take some adjusting for some people.
I think the advantage is if you lost your physical diary, you don't lose your whole world. And having something in the cloud where if you need to update it in real time, it's done. You don't have to get the eraser and take it out of the diary and then rewrite it, and then you've got no room because you've done that too many times in the day. So many times in the old system, I can remember just kind of mucking up the client as they would move from one day to next, and I forgot to erase it off the other day and things like that. So when we have a client management system, it helps us because then we can just reschedule that system, that client really easily, and it's done. The other thing that I think having an automated system where it's an online booking option, the client has a reminder of that session. Now, why is that helpful?
Well, not everybody puts these into their calendars, or life gets busy, and it just slips out of their minds. So it's really good to sometimes have a reminder if they haven't put it in their phone. If they have put it in the phone, then it's an added bonus. It also means that you're not losing money potentially as well, because your clients are being reminded that they've got an up and coming appointment with you.
Absolutely. I think too, we must think about things like cancellation policy and within what time frame are you happy to do that cancellation, and that can be all included on the online booking form, as well as if you are asking various questions, you can add that into the booking form as well if you need to. A lot of people in our field like to send a questionnaire. I'm not that way inclined, but if you're having a Zoom session with someone that they're not going to physically come in and write down their details and things, then you will need to think about sending them out something that they can go through before the session potentially. So you're not having to ask them all those questions. I don't mind asking questions. I think that's a wonderful opportunity to create rapport. So if you've got a booking system that has an integrated questionnaire, so before your session, there's just a couple of things I'd like to know about you, that kind of thing, that can be an opportunity. Now, a lot of clients won't fill that in. A lot of them get intimidated by forms and things like that, and they feel overwhelmed. So we need to be aware that it's not everyone's thing. So if they're faced to fill out a form before they've even booked your session, it may put off a few people.
I was going to ask you that, Meredith. I mean, I personally don't use forms before clients come to me. I take that opportunity to be doing that in my session and unpacking as we're going through that, and so that becomes part of the session. But I do know that a lot of people actually do that in advance. But I mean, how do you view that? I mean, obviously everyone's got their own way of practicing, but in the value, if it's the same way you do as I do, that are included in your actual session.
I definitely like to unpack a client face to face, but there are going to be some things that you might need the client to agree to. So there is normally a standard form where you'll get them to fill out a number of different details, like their name and address and email and phone number and so on. On top of that, you might want to ask, do you or have you had any diagnoses with any mental health issues and stuff like that? So, and if yes, what? And also, are you in any current medications, stuff like that? And then there is that consent to use your services. So that is something that I can't really say what you should have in there, because you need to look at your legal obligations and make sure you've got the right wording in a legal way. But a consent form is just that. You do need to have a level of consent to work with that client, and that they understand that they have rights and that you will keep their stuff confidential.
But would you just send that out to them before them actually coming to you? You'd get them to do that. And I guess only you would do the consent on a Zoom session before, so that you've got a signature, but in person you'd do it all at the same time, yeah?
I prefer to do that in person, and they get like a electronic thing here that I get them to fill out. So it's a standard form, and they just fill it out like a pen and paper, but it's all my filing. So I'm completely paperless, and I find that really useful, because I got to a point, I think, when you're practicing for as many years as I have, and seen as many clients as I've seen, you don't have enough space in the world to hold those client files. It got to the point where I remember I had these big cabinets, and they were so old, the files in there, that they were getting moldy, and the what do you call it? The paper clip was getting rusty, and it was just the day that I was able to scan them and get rid of them was really lovely. So it's all online. But I think I didn't want to go and buy another ream of paper and keep on going like that. So for me, going paperless and having a system where I store all of my electronic notes, in a safe place that only I can get hold of them.
Okay.
That's really important, yeah.
So I was going to say, with that in mind, like, we know if we are somebody that does old school and still using papers, then they've got to have a safe place to store it and make sure that it's locked up, so that you can keep those files confidential. But some people might not be aware of how you'd actually do that electronically.
Well, I think making sure your device has a password, so no one who takes it can just get it. So, thumbprint and all of that. Make sure that you do have that system in place. And there are things that you can do. Get help with an IT person if you're not sure. Go ask for advice and make sure that what you're doing is safe, and that where you're storing it in the cloud is safe. It's not going to be something that's hackable. Many people create a client filing system where they might allocate a number to the client. So the notes that you have with the client just has a client number rather than the full client's name and detail attached. So you can cross-reference it and have it somewhere else. So it's harder to hack.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd like to just sort of say, like with phones, one thing to be mindful of is if people are texting you, is that sometimes when that text message comes up, you get the name and you also get a part of the actual message showing to people. So be mindful because again, that could be a breach of security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you're in public, if you're on the train and you're sort of doing the emails back and forward, that person next to you can easily glance down and see details. So just be mindful about where you are, what you're doing when you're using electronic stuff in a social space. Maybe it's in a cafe and someone's listening to your call. Then that might not be appropriate either. So if you're going, so what's your name? Okay, can I just say that back? No. So people are listening. It really, just be mindful. Like if you are in a public space and you need to gain details, say, look, can you text me through your details? That might be a much nicer way than having to repeat out loud back again to the client all the details. Say, oh, look, I'm not in a position at the moment to talk. I'm out in public. Can I give you a call back in 10 minutes when I get back to the office? So being mindful of confidentiality. And also when you're ringing back someone and they've made me left a phone message, don't assume that their whole family knows you've rung. So you might say, is this an appropriate time to speak? And they have that opportunity to go, well, actually, no, it isn't. Could I give you a call back, or could you give me a call back whenever? And then you acknowledge that. So just because they sent you a message and it was very, very open and honest does not mean that they're at home or at work circumstances is easy for them to kind of participate in an open dialogue over the phone.
Same when leaving a voicemail message as well, just be mindful because other people do sometimes use people's phones and gain access to them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're human. We don't always think about these things. We just automatically do them because we think we're being helpful, getting back to somebody. But as a practitioner, there are things that you need to start to sort of be mindful about, eh?
That confidentiality and gathering only the information you really need and being responsible about how you hold it. All of these things, there are great systems out there that are quite safe. However, anything can be hacked. Look, if someone really, really wanted that information, they'll find it one way or another. But as long as you are doing your best with what you have to keep it safe, that's all you can do. However, if let's say you had lots of papers and it was a client file and you left it in your car and your car got stolen or broken into and those papers got stolen, that's negligence on your behalf. So if you are going to take the papers from A to B, keep them on your person, like keep hold of them as much as you can, because that is not a safe place to have them in a car.
No. Yeah. I mean, if your bag gets stolen and while you're walking along, that's a different thing altogether because you've done to your best ability to keep the confidentiality of your clients.
Yeah. So even thinking about what you put in a session note, it's really important that you're not putting your opinions of the client in the session note, because that client in New Zealand, I can't talk on any other places in the world, but in New Zealand, they have the right to ask for their notes.
I always liken it to, like, when I write my notes, that you've actually got that person sitting on your shoulder or standing behind you looking at what you're writing. And if you wouldn't feel comfortable with that, then don't put it down.
Exactly. So think about, okay, they covered a couple of facts about what happened. You do it in a factual way. You don't do it in an opinionated way. And you think, well, actually, would they like this to be written? Be mindful. So it could be that you make it slightly cryptic about what it is that they're talking about, and you have a system of knowing what that means rather than writing it fully, where it could be problematic. It has come in handy from time to time having clean notes of timing, where something happened in that person's timeline and it was an abuse issue where something happened domestically, and the police have then had permission from that client to get in contact with me And I've been able to confirm with them, yes, they did present and they did share this. And there are certain times where the client will want you to be able to share a few things with the police, potentially, if they're going to take that person to court. So, from time to time, you need to be thinking you may not, and the client may not be the only people that have access to that file at some point. So if it is found to be useful in a court of law, then pay attention to how you write your notes.
Yeah.
Okay. When we're looking at the idea of, I guess, growing a business and growing a database, there is a lot that you need to learn. And if you don't know, go ask people. So someone's done it before. So, if you don't know how to begin to put together a proper intake form, go ask some of your colleagues, what have they done? What's worked for them? And maybe get some ideas. I'm very wary about sharing anything particularly on this platform because, again, that I'm not a legal expert. I'm just here to give you some understandings, but really you have to take on board the responsibility of legal obligation. Whatever you're doing with that consent form, it needs to adhere to privacy and right conduct within your place wherever you are in the world.
And your Health Practitioners Act and that. And from time to time, they do change and update. So it is good to actually go and have a look and check in every now and again. You don't need to memorize it. That's what the documents are there for you to refer to.
Yeah. Was there anything else that would be useful to talk about, Teresa, today?
For your client management on systems, I guess good recording, password protection. We covered the password protection, haven't we?
About recording a session, actually, I think that's a good one to talk about, right? So when we're thinking about recording a session for a client, many times I think that's a really good asset. We are having discussions actually last night with fellow colleagues, weren't we, about what they did. But what I prefer to do is record all of the session for the client, and then the client has that session to reflect on and listen to later. What I need to be mindful of is how I get it to them and making sure that their information is safe. So you need to be making sure you're cross-referencing the time it was recorded. It is actually that person's session. You're naming it appropriately, and you're only sending it to the email that they agreed for you to send it to. So there are some things that you need to make sure. So let's say they made the booking and it was a business email, and it was that they're working under a business and they made it there. If you don't ask them, look, is it okay to send that recording to your booking email, they might go, oh, hang on, no, I'll give you my personal one. So, anything like that, when you're sending information about them that could be very personal, just be checking in, is that an okay email to send it to? Because that might push them to think maybe it's not.
The same as with recording. There's sort of a couple of schools of thoughts on that. Like, you can record your session and you can use it so you don't use identifying names, and then you can reuse that later on and put that out. You can record just your session part and use that for reinforcement and give that to your client. But also there is thought, and I mean, I don't know can't make up my mind where I lie on this one, is like when your client comes in, you record the whole session with them, but you only actually give them that part necessarily of the actual hypnosis journey for them to listen to. They can have the other bit if they want to, but for your own safety reasons, just in case anything did happen with the client, you've got a record of what you said and what you did.
Yeah. You need to get consent to be able to record them. So you don't do it in a covert way. It's always important. And many best practices, when you start to record it, you get them to consent. So you ask them a question, say, is it okay to record it? Right, can I get you to repeat that when we start the recording? So is it okay? You've agreed that this is okay to capture on a recording? Yes, it's okay. You have my consent. Then you continue. So you've got that literally on record. Now, when we're looking at your safety, someone might say, no, I prefer not to. Well, it's up to you whether you feel comfortable with continuing, if it's only going to be used for your records. But most people, as I've found, are quite okay for you to use it for that reason, but they're not interested in listening to it again. That's okay. So it's just making sure that there's transparency in how you're doing things, that you're not just doing it undercover. Because if you did it undercover, you can't use it. So if someone said, hey, you did da, 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 and they didn't know that you recorded it, you cannot use that.
Yeah, it's not, it's inadmissible, isn't it, in court? So yeah, it's actually illegal to record somebody without them knowing. They have to give consent.
Yeah. So all of these things are things to think about when you're building up a practice and when you're dealing with clients. You're going to deal with all sorts of different people, and it's about you being safe and you doing the right thing and making sure that you're working within the parameters of your obligations as a professional, and what data and how you use it and where you store it. All of those things are important. So electronically, I think, is an easier way because you can add forms, you can think about the legal things, it's all there. If you have paper, you've got to store the paper somewhere, and it has to be safe storage. It's a minimum of 10 years from the last time you saw the client. So you need to keep hold of those records for that period of time in New Zealand. But do check your laws around where you live and your country, because obviously there'll be different obligations.
And don't look at this recording in a few years' time and believe it's still the same, because again, that can change.
That is true. That is true. I think, though, for your well-being, if something were to happen, there was an incident and it did go to court and then they wanted your records and you've got them, it's really handy. And, it gives you a framework. For example, if they made a complaint against you, in hindsight, maybe they saw you 7 years ago and someone said, well, you really need to actually follow that up. Then you've got proof there of how that session was and what you covered and what that situation, and you can talk to it. But if you don't have the record anymore, you're in the dark. Like, good luck. The best person trying to remember what's happened. It's not great if you can't remember it and can't refer back to those client notes. The other one is, if they want to come back to you, they may well do that within a 10-year frame. And it would be nice to have already their details there ready to go so they don't have to refill out everything again. But if it has been too long, or if they've moved address or other details have changed, obviously you want to be updating that detail. But having old records ready to go if the client were to return to you, I think is really helpful.
Yes, I do too. I frequently have people come back after a period of time because something else has come up, and then you can go back and you can have a look at those details. And it's a reminder for you as well as who they were if you haven't seen them for some time.
And just to reiterate the importance of electronic filing rather than manual paper, it was a nightmare to think, now, which year did they come to me and which box was that stored in? Because honestly, trying to find the old client file, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It took time and energy. So, when we're looking at the ease of electronic databases, definitely highly recommend that for a healthy practice. It's going to save you time. You're going to know where the file is. You'll be able to use it easily. Is there anything else we should cover today, you reckon?
I think we've probably covered a lot of that. If anyone has any questions, then drop a comment in the box or give us an email and, do the usual, like and subscribe to our channel.
Nice. And if you are interested to train to become a clinical hypnotherapist out there, or just need some coaching or support, visit our website, nzach.ac.nz. So we'd love to hear from you. If you do have any comments or questions, or want to us to talk about something that you may be a bit sort of lost about, please, flick us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Comments are important. So thank you again, Teresa, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.